Hello and welcome to another episode of Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. And Into the Afroverse is where we're taking Black folks into the future. Today, we are fortunate enough to be joined by Juanita Sunday Austin. Juanita Austin is a cultural producer and curator. Originally from New London, Connecticut, she received her BA in digital media and design with a concentration in interactive media design from the University of Connecticut and has been a leader in various grassroots community arts initiatives. Currently, she is founder of Cultured AF, an arts organization that supports underrepresented artists, particularly Black and queer individuals, and strives to create safe and equitable space for their work to thrive. And with that, I'd like to welcome Juanita Austin. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. As I was sharing with you before we began to record, I just want to thank you for reaching out and wanting to be part of this. I am familiar with your work. So when I saw that you were interested, I was very excited to have you on board. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to chat for this conversation.
Excellent. So as always, to kind of like I always say, use the comic book geek language. I always get into people's origin stories
Mm.
because I'm always interested to see what is it that brought them to where they are, especially as it relates to Afrofuturism. So if you could share a little bit more about yourself and just kind of give us an idea of what brought you to this space of Afrofuturism.
Yeah, so specifically Afrofuturism, a moment very clear for me. It was back in 2021. I was working at Connecticut College at the time, and I had the opportunity to take an online workshop with Ingrid LaFleur, how to think like an Afrofuturist. And so I had the opportunity to take that workshop, and it really opened my eyes to this whole new world for me. And so I was familiar with Afrofuturism, before, but that workshop really put it into context and a framework for me. And it was a way for me to see myself in a space, to see my work in a context, and completely just changed the way I saw the world, the way I saw my relationship with other Black people, my community, and how I really just wanted to move forward, and continuing the work that I do. So that was definitely an instrumental moment for me in terms of stepping into the Afrofuturism space.
Excellent. Now, with the show and myself being an Afrofuturist, there's still folks that are not familiar with it. And part of what we're doing is trying to spread the message. What is it in particular that was so appealing to you? And why do you think it is that so many people, once they hear it, they're like taken by it and it's really spreading? It's been around for a while as far as a term, but within the
Right.
last few years, it's definitely been spreading and more folks are learning about it and embracing it. What is it that you think about Afrofuturism where folks are embracing it?
Yeah, I know for me, it's being able to unapologetically center our experiences in our own universes.
Mm-hmm.
That was really appealing to me, that we are able to create these futures and these worlds that's independent of white folks and white supremacy, and that does not have to be our legacy. And there's a completely different future for us out there. And to me, that was what was appealing. And all of the work that I was doing prior always centered Black
Right,
folks.
right.
So that's always where my passion and my creative drive comes from. But being able to now take that work and put it in a context that's driving Black folks to the future and thinking about our future was what was really appealing to me.
Excellent. And if you give us some idea as to the work that you're doing in Connecticut.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a curator and cultural producer and have been doing this work since about 2016, 2017. And so I've been producing art exhibitions, art experiences for the last several years. And so my first exhibition back in 2017, I believe, was called Illumination. And very simple concept, was just, highlighting Black artists within my community. And then I've been curating exhibitions every 2 years since then. And so my second exhibition was called Reclaimed, and it focused on reclaiming Black spirituality and Black religions that have been lost to us. Continued on. That's when I also started Cultured AF at that time.
Mhm.
And so, being from New London, I really wanted to create a space that focused on Black arts and Black culture. And that was something that was really needed within Southeastern Connecticut. And so that launched, and I was producing events for my community, having my own art gallery and space that centered us. And then I continued with Nappy was my third exhibition that I did at Connecticut College, and that focused on Black hair. And then particularly after the Crown Act, it was pretty relevant. And then that was the same time that I was able to take the How to Think Like an Afrofuturist workshop. And so moving into 2023, that work from that workshop had been on my mind for a couple years. And so when I was asked to do another exhibition, Sixth Dimension kind of came out of that. It was that 2 years of thinking about that workshop, thinking about Afrofuturism and how to integrate it into the work that I do. When I was asked to do this next exhibition, my first thought was exploring the Black experience, exploring Black bodies across time and space. And so that was my first initial concept with the exhibition. And I started doing a deeper dive into Afrofuturism, reading more books. I discovered Black quantum futurism and all of these wonderful people in this space. And so now I'm in the second iteration of Sixth Dimension, which has turned into a decentralized festival in New Haven, Connecticut. So I'm able to really introduce Afrofuturism to Connecticut, to New Haven, in this really unique experience that brings together an immersive exhibition. There's a one-day summit that I'm producing, as well as different pop-up events and programs and public art over the course of this 2 months.
So in a nutshell, you've been busy.
Yes,
No,
absolutely.
that is excellent. I want to go back to a couple of things that I heard in the descriptions of the different projects you've been working on. When you talked about the exhibition around reclaiming
Mm-hmm.
African spirituality, what is it that you think has been lost or misinterpreted or
Yeah.
misconstrued? And what is it that you feel that we need to reclaim?
Right. So that's a great question. So as I was doing that exhibition and research, there's a lot of overlap. We know how important the church is, particularly to the Black community, Black American community. I can speak to specifically in Christianity, and a lot of the practices are and traditions are really just reformatted from hoodoo,
Right.
which is in a, a Black spirituality that was formed here, right? That we created. And then a lot of practices still go back to African traditional religions. And so there's been so much um, within white supremacy and colonialism from trying to separate us from these traditions that were ingrained in us from coming from Africa. And so like part of that is taking away, that's how you break people down. You separate them from their culture, you separate them from their traditions. And then also on at the same time flipping that on them and making it something bad, making it something evil. And so even still now, I know a lot of Black people have an apprehension towards or fear of hoodoo or voodoo or African traditional religions, right? But a lot of the same practices that folks do in churches and Christianity really comes from that. And so an example I can think of is like jumping the broom, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that comes from African traditional religions. And there's so many other examples of customs that Black people do, even in their home, unintentionally creating altars, right? They may not call it an altar, but what this is an altar.
Right.
Yeah, so there was so much of that, and that's what I wanted to explore in that exhibition is being able to reclaim some of these ideas and bring it back to us in this positive light, no matter how we choose to practice now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was what that was about.
Yeah, and it's always interesting when we talk about religion and the fear that's been put in
Mm-hmm.
Black folk when it comes to looking to our own past to find our spirituality. You will have Black folk, speak negatively, as you stated,
Right.
about traditional African beliefs, but yet they'll talk about speaking in tongues.
Exactly.
And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what do you we think we got that from? We've been doing
Right.
that,
Yeah.
and you just see those practices. So I'm glad that you're able to have these exhibits because the other thing is it's great to see this conversation in another space outside of church or outside of the home where folks can say, okay, there's something to this. Because if it's just being held in the church, just being held at home, only going to get one perspective.
Exactly.
And with you opening it up, I think that that's going to invite folk in to see those parallels and those connections. Do you see any crossover between African spirituality and Afrofuturism? Because one of the things that I've experienced is when you talk about people being turned off to traditional or spiritual African beliefs, certain things as relates to Afrofuturism, a lot of Black folk will shy away from or turn away from because they feel like that is, anti-religious or
Yeah.
something like that. If I'm, speaking on a particular book, be it science fiction or fantasy or certain concepts, they kind of feel like that's challenging their religious beliefs. So what do you see as the crossover between religion and Afrofuturism?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think there is a connection. One, I think within Afrofuturism, where people get a misconception is that it's only about the future, right?
Right.
But we're also looking at our past, and thinking about that. And you have to have a grounding within your past and your history. And even thinking about Ingrid LaFleur's workshop and her Afrofuturist principles, the core of those principles was ancestral grounding, right? And so we have to have that connection to our ancestors, which is a really key component within African traditional religions, and being able to honor the people that have come before us. So I find that that's definitely a connection. I think even within African traditional religions, there's a lot of futurist concepts and practices that they do. And even within the exhibition that I have now, there's an installation that's in honor of Yemaya that someone did. And so I definitely think there's a connection between African traditional religions, honoring our past, honoring our ancestors, as we're looking at Afrofuturism at the same time.
Excellent. And you say Yamaya.
Yes.
Could you please explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So Yemaya is an Orisha goddess of the Yoruba tradition, and she represents motherhood in the sea. And so she's often represented as a mermaid. She represents Earth, the life giver. And so there's an installation within Sixth Dimension, my exhibition right now, that someone did in honor of her. And then at the opening reception, there was some practices and that she did with folks there in the exhibition. And so part of what I wanted to do was create these sort of different dimensions within the exhibition. So that was one where you can sort of like honor the past, honor our ancestors, honor African traditional religions within the Sixth Dimension exhibition. And I thought it was important to include that as we're also having some of these other focuses within the show.
Excellent. And if you're just joining us, this is Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones, where we're taking Black folks into the future. And we're welcoming Juanita Austin, the cultural producer and curator from New London, Connecticut. How can folks find you? How can they contact you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Six Dimension Fest. So that's six with the number six TH. Dimension Fest. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and then our website is sixdimension.net. Again, that's the number six. And if anyone wants to shoot me an email, it's afrofuture@sixdimension.net.
Excellent. I want to go back to, well, first, where exactly can we find the exhibit? Where's the sixth dimension being held at?
Yeah, so it's being held at the lab at Concorp in Hamden, Connecticut, which is right outside of New Haven, Connecticut.
Excellent. I want to go back to another one of the exhibits that stood out in your description. You were talking about hair
Mm-hmm.
dedicated to, I believe it was called Nappy, you said it was?
Yes. Yep.
And what's interesting to me is, I always say this, Black folk aren't fighting any new fights.
Mm-hmm.
It
Nothing's
just
new.
right. It just never ceased to amaze me that in 2023, the same battles, the same conversations,
Yes.
the same obstacles and impediments are still there. And it seems like we claim progress, but how much progress is there? We're going back to these same fights.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that continues to be an issue when it comes to hair for Black men and women?
Oh, wow. That's, I think one is, I mean, whether people agree or not, Black hair is always going to be political. Um, and that's unfortunate that this natural thing that's just grows out of our bodies has to have
Right,
this political context around it.
right.
Um, and I don't know when that's going to change, right? So
Mhm.
the fact that we're, celebrating the Crown Act, which was what 2020, and I'm like, this is actually sad.
Right,
It's actually sad that in 2020 there needs to be a legal policy that tells folks that you can't discriminate against hair, and particularly Black Afro hair. Um, and so I don't know, I guess within the Black community, there's, still issues within ourselves. So before we can even
right,
get and talk about, the wider world, talk about white folks, there's still so many conversations even within our own community that we're having
right,
about our hair. And it's such an interesting situation because I don't know how or when that changes. I think even within now, I think also something that prompted the exhibition at the time was seeing this sort of return to the natural hair movement, right? And you see this common waves within our community, thinking about, um, actual Afro 60s and 70s and that being political, right? Then you get to the 80s and 90s and we kind of reverted to straight hair, right? To relaxers. And then coming back into the 2010s, seeing it sort of this return back to natural hair, a lot of it having to do with really just with money and
right,
commercialism, right? And
right.
people realizing, oh my God, we can make money off of natural hair products and sell this back to Black people. So it's just interesting seeing the waves and cycles that we go through, even within our own community regarding our hair. And I really particularly wanted to call the exhibition Nappy, because going back into reclaiming, clearly that's something that I have a recurring theme within my work. So wanting to reclaim that word, a word that is often used in a derogatory and negative
Right,
way towards our hair, but use it in this particular in a positive light, within this exhibition, and reclaiming that naps are okay, right?
right.
And how we look at our hair. Yes, I don't know if that answered your
No,
question,
it does.
but
It does.
there's so much to unpack when
Right.
it
Yeah.
comes to just
Exactly.
hair.
Exactly. I mean, that I think that's a field of study unto itself.
Right.
Because I just saw where what's his name, Shakari Richardson, the
Mm-hmm.
track runner,
Yep.
just ran, and I saw more conversation around her
Yeah.
hair than the accomplishment of the race itself. So
Yes.
it's just funny that we always go back to these conversations, and got to bring Afrofuturism back into it. This idea of just envisioning this future for us, I just would to love to see a future where we can fully embrace
Mm-hmm.
who we are and what we are without question, without doubt, regardless of, how we decide to display ourselves, I guess, display ourselves to the
Right.
out world. Just would love to see a place where we're just 100% comfortable from head to toe. So yeah, I just think that is fascinating that you have an exhibit on that. So let's move it forward a little bit. In terms of the sixth dimension, this program has actually been running now for quite some time, for a
Mm-hmm.
few weeks now. So could you give us a little bit more about it? And in terms of, someone comes out to see it, what can they expect to see? What can they expect to experience when they come to the sixth dimension exhibit?
Sure. So the exhibition has been open since August 26th, at the lab at Concord. And so it's the space that it's in is like a raw, unfinished space. So the building was a former school. And I love that one. It's in a building that's operated by a Black owned space and company, which
Excellent.
is really important to me.
Mhm.
And so you take this elevator up to the third floor. And so you start off in this building that's remodeled, redone. And then you take the elevator up to the third floor and you get into this unfinished, raw space, which I really love. And so it's because it was a former school, each room is like, it's a long hallway with different classrooms that have been transformed into these different exhibitions or what I call different dimensions within the exhibition. And so each room is really a different feeling and an experience that you go into. And so that's what I really wanted to curate as people move through the exhibition, that they're moving to these different worlds or these different dimensions. There's some interactive, elements within the exhibition in terms of activities that folks can do in different spaces. There is some augmented reality pieces within the exhibition, a lot of sculptural and three-dimensional work, which I was really excited to be able to include more of that into my exhibition this year. So I think coming in, you're really going to be in for a surprise as folks coming into this space, and I hope it gives them uh, something to think about and chew on and really feel that they're in this immersive experience.
Excellent. Any plans on taking this exhibit on the road, or is Connecticut just a home for it right now?
I would love to. That's definitely something that's in the plans. The exhibition was originally in New London, Connecticut earlier this year. And so the original idea was to move it to different cities in Connecticut. So I hope to have it in Hartford this summer, but that didn't work out. So I moved it to New Haven, where it's at now.
Mhm.
And so there's definitely been conversation about bringing the exhibition to different spaces. And something that really makes me excited about Sixth Dimension is seeing how it can change and grow as it moves to different places. The exhibition is changing even within the same location that it is in now. So I tell folks that it's a living and growing exhibition. And one of the things was playing with the idea of time and space, right? And
Right.
I think when we go to exhibitions, there's always this very static kind of thing. And I didn't want the exhibition to be static as we're experiencing time and experiencing, different things. So that's definitely something I would love to do, is to bring it to another space outside of Connecticut and see how it grows and changes.
Excellent. Yeah, I was going to ask in terms of how do you recommend people come into this sixth dimension? I love that name. Come into the sixth dimension in terms of, when we go to museums, we go to exhibits, folks just kind of walk through, take in a little bit and so forth. But it really sounds like yours is interactive, that yours is definitely more inviting. So someone's coming to your space. Any recommendations? Not telling folks how to like enjoy themselves, but any recommendations in terms of how to get the full experience?
Yeah, I would say come in ready to sit with the work. And so something I included in this exhibition, which I like to try include in most of my spaces, is that there's like a reading room, sort of lounge space,
Okay.
that allows people to really sit down and be in the space. I always include books in my exhibition. So whatever books I bought through my own research as I'm preparing for an exhibition, or just other things I find interesting, I include in the exhibition so folks can get more context around the exhibition and the work that I'm doing. As I mentioned, there's different activities that folks can do within the space. So, be prepared to write. I have this activity where people can write letters to the future. I have coloring books out. So it's really, when I create exhibitions, it's really something where I don't want people to come, look, and leave, right?
Right.
So it's, you're invited to be in the space and to hang out and just sit with the artwork. And that's how I really recommend people take in the show. And so, I had the opening reception, which was really amazing, almost, 200 people that came that night. And it was a lot of energy and so much fun. And so many people were like, oh my God, I have to go back so I can really take everything in, and have a moment to really dive into the exhibition. So it's definitely something that, some people are coming back a couple times to see the work again, and take their time with it.
Excellent. And once again, if you're just joining us, this is Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. We're taking Black folks into the future. And today we are joined by Juanita Sunday. I'm just curious about the nickname Sunday. Where did that come from?
So Sunday is my family name on my mother's side.
Okay.
So they're the line of Sundays. And so that's just, again, something I do to honor my family, and it sounds fun. People like it, and it stuck. So I decided to keep it as in my professional work to go by Juanita Sunday.
Oh no, that's excellent. It's definitely memorable. And as I'm talking with you, and then I'm listening to this exhibit, and I'm just fascinated, and I'm looking forward to actually going myself in the coming weeks. You mentioned writing letters to yourself in the future.
Mhm.
That's really interesting. Where did that come from, and what would someone gain, or how does that? I don't know if it's there to help, to comfort. I guess like what would be the purpose of that? Because I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I believe it was actually, I wish I had my notes up.
Mhm.
But it was something I just found in my research. I was looking through, like, I think it was like a digital magazine or something I saw. And it was an activity that someone did, and I really enjoyed that. So within the exhibition, there's a board up where people can write a note and post it up onto the board. And so, one, it's something where I wanted to have this collective memory and archive,
Mhm.
where people could, not only, write something for themselves, and thinking about their future and their place in the future, but also for something for other people as they're coming into this exhibition and seeing this collective memory of folks. So I think that's, for me, what it's about, being able to see other people's thoughts about the future, about themselves, about where they see themselves in the world. As you first come into the exhibition, there's another board up that says temporal memories, and it was, again, another space for people to just leave a message for other folks coming into the exhibition, for themselves, or for the space in general. And so I really just wanted to collect all of these thoughts and feelings that people were experiencing through this exhibition, and also give people time to collect themselves and give them time to think and center themselves for a moment within the exhibition.
Was there a challenge for you? You know, because once again, this sounds amazing. I'm sure folks are listening. They want to come out and attend. Was there a challenge for you when you first envisioned this in explaining it to other people to get other people to buy in? Or was it something that when folks heard it, you know, and it's just like, I'm in? What was that process like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did the exhibition first earlier this year. It opened in January in New London, Connecticut. And so I think there was definitely a little bit of a greater challenge.
Mm.
I think explaining it to people. I tried to do some, collaborations with folks in the city, and it was not as like I wouldn't say well received. I think people were just like, okay, so what,
Right.
And so moving it here to New Haven, though, I think I received a much greater reception
Mhm.
from folks, and people wanted to collaborate, even if people didn't know exactly what Afrofuturism was at first. Once when I explained it and gave the concept of what I was trying to do, people seemed to be really excited about it. So for example, even I was able to partner with the town green district in New Haven that sort of runs a lot of the storefronts and just the maintaining the downtown space in New Haven, and told them I wanted to do some public art. And they were really excited about that. And so originally it was supposed to be a storefront project, but it turned into working with an artist to paint some of the electrical boxes downtown. And
Oh,
so we were
okay.
able to do that, which is really fun. So that's a moment where we're able to take the art out of the exhibition and bring it to people on the street in a fun way. So that was a fun collaboration that I was able to do, and it really took one meeting, and they were like, "Yes, we love it. Let's do it."
Right.
And then so many of the other programs within the exhibition are through the support of other businesses or organizations being able to host my events there. So there's a book club social that we're doing at two different locations in New Haven. There's an Afrofuturism and Jazz event, a tea party, and so none of this would be possible without the support and collaborations of folks in New Haven. And so people just seem to really be excited about a different kind of art experience here.
Excellent. You know, and listening once again to the exhibits, and now you're bringing in jazz and all these other aspects to it. What are your concerns for the future of Black people? Where is it that you feel like we're going in the right direction? Where do
Mm,
you feel like we're going in the wrong direction? And what can you do, or what have you done, what are you currently doing to kind of bring about this future that you want to see for Black people?
wow. Yeah, so what immediately comes to mind is I think in terms of starting with maybe the wrong direction, right?
Mm.
Um, one of my I don't know who came up with this quote, so I'm not sure where it comes from, but colonized minds come up with colonized solutions. And I think that quote to me is one of the reasons why we desperately need Afrofuturism,
Right.
to decolonize the way that we're thinking, in order to even be able to come up with other solutions, right? Because if we're still coming up with solutions to the same problems, utilizing the same thinking that we've been doing for the last hundreds of years, then
Right.
we're not going to get anywhere. And
Right.
so one, I'm thinking about even just the political landscape that we're in, right? And even talking with Black folks about the way that we vote, right? First voting one, and then the way that we vote, right?
Right.
And so we seem there's like this undying loyalty to voting for a particular party, right? And not thinking about how we're actually using our political power to make sure we're actually getting the things that we're asking for, right?
Right.
So if a party knows that these people are going to vote this way no matter what we do, then they have no incentive to actually make change or provide us with any of the things that we're asking for.
Right.
You see a lot of symbolic gestures that they give us as a token. So, for example, making Juneteenth a national holiday. Great. What does that actually do for us, though? Right?
Right. Right.
We get excited when we get these little wins
Right.
in quotes, little wins, but I'm like, that didn't actually do anything. They gave us a cookie to make it seem like they're things are changing and we're honoring you, but it's like, okay, no, reparations, you
Right.
know, let's have that conversation. And so I think something that um, is an issue is that it's getting distracted by these performative things,
Right.
and not getting to the actual change, the things that are really going to make a difference within our futures. Um, I do see on a positive note, within the Black community, like for example, Black women being, one of the most educated groups, not one of the most educated group within the country, and that's beautiful. Um, and I think that's something, that's always in a positive light. Then it's like, where do we take that power, right? I'm also thinking about our financial situation, right? So how do we, as a Black people, generate wealth within our own communities? And I see, and again, on a positive note, I see that there's a lot of that happening. There's Black folks buying land, and creating their own communities to keep that wealth there. I'm
Right.
thinking about some organizations even within New Haven. There's Concord here that just bought a block in Dixwell, which is a historically Black neighborhood here in New Haven, to buy back the block and redevelop that and really make that block a space for Black entrepreneurship, for Black business, and Black wealth generation. And so I see those things happening, and I know they're happening. How do we continue making these things happen on a larger scale for Black folks? I think is the question. So there's definitely wonderful things happening, and there's still things that I'm like, we have to change our thinking and about some things. We have to change our approach and process towards certain things. We can't continue doing the same things that we've been doing, or also relying on white people thinking that they're going to suddenly not be racist, or suddenly break down the system of racism when it doesn't benefit them to do so.
Right.
And so stop relying on, well, if we do this, and if we continue along these lines, they'll change, or they'll give us this. They're not going to give us anything.
Exactly.
So we have to figure out how we make those things for ourselves. And I think that's where Afrofuturism and Afrofuturist thinking can really be a benefit to our community.
That's excellent. Yeah, I always say, like, if you haven't gotten it by 2023,
Right.
if I haven't given it to you by now,
Right.
I'm not giving it to you. So I certainly agree with that. And I love the conversation. I love the statements that you made around politics. And I think that one of the things as we move forward, that we have to get comfortable with is being uncomfortable. I think
Yeah.
that, you mentioned loyalty to a particular party and so forth. And certainly we've been taken for granted by one side and ignored by another. And
Hmm.
I think if we're going to move forward politically, there might come a time where we have to make certain decisions when it comes to voting patterns, to where, yeah, for, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever the case might be, we may be uncomfortable because
Yep.
we made a certain choice
Yep.
and we said, no, this is not for right now. This is for the future. And
Exactly.
that's that's why I'm doing this show. That's why you're doing what you're doing. There's so many other people that are involved in this Afrofuturistic school of thought. That's why we're doing what we're doing, is because we have to recognize that some of the stuff we're doing today isn't for us today. It may
Right.
be for folks
Yep.
I'm gonna never meet.
Mm.
And I think that was something that was lost. I think folks in the 50s and 60s, I think they really understood that,
Understood that.
you
Yeah.
know. And I think one of the things I would like to see us embrace, and it may not sound right, but I would like for us to embrace this idea of being uncomfortable, this
Yes.
idea that we're going to have to give some things up today
Yep.
for
To
tomorrow.
secure something tomorrow. Absolutely.
Exactly. So I guess if I'm writing a letter to myself in the future, that's going to be my theme. That's going to be, what I'm talking about. Hey, man, we got to I'm sacrificing for you right now so you
Hmm.
can have a better future. So in terms of bringing this future about, I see what you're doing with the sixth dimension and so forth. Is there anything else that you see yourself uh, contributing to bring about this future?
Ooh, that's a beautiful question. Um, right now, this being in this Afrofuturist space is something that's still really new and exciting for me.
Mhm.
And so I know one sixth dimension, whatever shape that's going to take and look like in the future, is going to be either a yearly or biannual program that I do here in New Haven.
Mhm.
And so I have the summit that's coming up on October 14th, which is I'm really excited for that because that's an opportunity to now take, this exhibition, all of the fun events that we've been doing and really put it into a context to talk about the work that Black people are doing here in Connecticut and beyond, and put that in Afrofuturist context for folks, so we
Mhm.
can have these deeper conversations where change can actually happen. So I'm really excited to introduce this summit to New Haven and Connecticut and see where this movement grows here. And so something I definitely want to do is start, hopefully, I've been talking with Dr. Renato Anderson
Mhm.
and the Black Speculative Arts Movement, and having a collective here in New Haven, and continue to grow this conversation and grow this space within this area here in the Northeast.
Excellent. And well, real quick before I move on to my next question, please remind us, how can folks reach you?
Yeah, folks can reach me. We're on Instagram and Facebook, Sixth Dimension Fest. So that's the number six, Dimension Fest. Our website is sixthdimension.net. Again, that's the number six. And if you want to send me an email, I'm afrofuture at sixthdimension.net.
Excellent. You mentioned Dr. Ronaldo Anderson. I'm familiar with him. I've had him on the show, actually.
Mm-hmm.
We've had conversations, and I'm looking at the work that you're doing and the work that he's done and other people are doing. Without going into details that this has happened, have you been approached by anyone to sell your idea, to somehow or another relinquish some of it? Are folks trying to buy what you're doing and take it over?
That has not happened yet.
Okay. And the reason why I ask this is because with so many of these things that are happening, when I'm meeting people, at some point they get approached.
Yeah.
And one of the concerns, and I always bring this up to my guests with leaders like yourself, especially when you have foundations, you have events, this idea of protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about this many times because, like I said, it's a great concern of mine that we have these things, we construct these things, we build these things, and we're talking about the future. But all too often, when we start to have success, we lose control of it.
Yeah.
And what are you doing to maintain control? What are you doing to protect it?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So right now, a lot of the work I'm doing is so intrinsic to me as my artistic practice, right? So even within my exhibition, I don't just curate, I also, create art within the exhibition as well. And producing events, creating experiences is part of my social practice. So the work that I'm doing is so intrinsically tied to me
Right.
that it's very difficult for me to separate myself from my work, because it's almost like my art at this moment. There will become a time, and I've been thinking about this, that I'm like, okay, I am going to have to separate cultured AF, separate, sixth dimension, whatever that may look like in the future, if I want this to be something that lasts beyond me.
Right.
And so I haven't figured out exactly what that's going to look like, how I build that structure so that it becomes its own entity. beyond me and has a lasting legacy. It's something I think about actually very often. How do I build this team? How do I build this system and process to last? I don't have an answer to that yet.
Right.
But it's definitely something that I want to protect. I
Right.
know one of my goals in the future is to create a museum um of one of my art collection that I'm building now, but just of all the work that I've done, and leave it in a foundation that's protected,
I see.
so then that's, that can't be, taken away or destroyed. So that's something that I'm thinking about as I'm like thinking about legacy and building something that can last beyond me and into the future. um yeah, so those are questions I'm still toying with and playing with and figuring out.
Gotcha. So on a different note, when I have Afrofuturists on, and there's like there's always a geek component to Afrofuturism. So my question to you is, what are you watching? What are you reading as it relates to Afrofuturism?
Yeah. Right now I'm reading, as part of our Sixth Dimension book club. So reading The Memory Librarian, by Janelle Monáe and other wonderful writers. So highly recommend that book if you're into speculative fiction, short stories. Really, really great book to get into Afrofuturism, queer love, all the things. So that's something I'm really enjoying. I just watched, I don't know if you heard of the short series, is it Kakazi Moto? Animated series.
Hmm.
Really, really great. Yeah, Kakazi Moto Generation of Fire. It's a short series. It's about 10 episodes. They're about 15 minutes each. It's actually on Disney Channel.
Yep.
So that's like a great little anthology if someone wants to get introduced into some Afrofuturist shows. Great for children, but also adults because I watched it.
Right.
So that's really great. Uh, there's a movie that I'm in the process of watching, but of course I can't think of the name right now. But that's some of the things that
Right.
lately that I've watched and read. There's
Excellent.
also a great book by Tochi Onyebuchi,
Mhm.
um, and it is called Goliath. And so it's like a post-apocalyptic Afrofuturist novel. It's actually set in New Haven,
Oh wow.
which is, yeah, really cool. So also reading that book, highly recommend that. And Tochi's actually writing right now for writing new writer for Black Panther
Mhm.
comics for Marvel as well as Captain America. So definitely check out his work, and really great guy. I did an interview with him last year at Elm City Lit Fest that we host here in New Haven.
Oh, wow. Wow, you are just busy. You are just busy out there, and that's a wonderful thing, because when you find that thing that you love, that you're passionate about, this is the result. So I'm so happy to hear all the work that you're doing up there, and I'm just looking forward to hearing more and more about it. And I'm extending the invitation to you right now, that at any given time, as you get more projects off the ground, develop more things, that you are always welcome to come back onto the show and discuss those things or anything else that you want to talk about, because you've just been a great guest. I'm sure folks out there are enjoying hearing your words today.
I appreciate that. I'm on I mentioned Elm City Lit Fest, or Culturally Lit. It's called Now New Haven, which is another team I'm on. And
Mm.
so we also do DiasporaCon, which is usually in April. And so that's a yearly conference that we do, to talk about Black people within the comic book and graphic novel space. So that's also a really great thing I would love to talk about as we get closer to that for next year.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Because, a lot of times when we talk about what the Black community needs or what it's lacking, what we need to do, there's a lot of folks out there that are always saying, well, we're not doing this, we're not doing that, and we are doing it.
We
So,
are.
exactly,
Yes. Yep.
exactly. So I love to bring folks like yourself on to highlight that we are doing these things, that we are working on these issues, that
Hmm.
we're fighting the good fight, and we're keeping that legacy of resistance alive. Because all too often,
Absolutely.
this narrative is pushed that we're not doing nothing. And anyone, when you look at the way that history has been taught in many circles, they've always given this impression that we've just kind of quietly
Yep.
sat back and took it. So you're just that legacy of resistance, and we just want to keep that going on to the future. So I salute you in all your endeavors and just wish you the best of success.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much. So, believe it or not, we're coming up close to the end. It goes so quickly.
It
Uh,
does.
what final words or thoughts do you have that you'd like to share with us?
Um, Final thoughts. Keep it real simple. There are Black people in the future. Um, and this is our time to make that future for ourselves.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, we ain't going nowhere. We ain't going
Ain't
nowhere.
going nowhere.
And one more time before we close, I want to make sure that folks know who you are, where you are, how they can find you. Give us the social media and also the location of the event and the dates as well.
Absolutely. So, Sixth Dimension Fest is going on right now in New Haven, Connecticut. It's going through October 28th. You can come see the exhibition at the lab at Concorp. There's also a great one-day summit on Afrofuturism on October 14th that will have a keynote by Dr. Renato Anderson as well as Ingrid LaFleur. You can find more information about Sixth Dimension and all of the programming that's happening through October at Instagram or Facebook, sixthdimension.fest. That's the number six. You can also send us an email at afrofuture at sixthdimension.net.
Excellent, excellent. So like I said, I just really appreciate the work that you're doing, and this stuff is just needed. Are you making appearances anywhere else, or right now are you just in with all that you're doing, that you're just in Connecticut, or are you traveling around? Is there a way where folks can find you? And are any of these events virtual, the conference or anything else that you're doing?
Yeah, so right now, just in Connecticut, but after October, I am open and free, and would happy to move around. The conference, have not decided whether it's going to have a hybrid feature. Most likely will be recorded, and then I can put sessions online for folks to check those panels and discussions out.
Excellent. One last question, because I know I have a lot of artists that listen and tune into the show. Are you looking for, if not for this exhibit, 'cause obviously this is already done, but for
Yeah.
future exhibits, are you always looking for new artists? What's the process if you are? How can someone submit their work to you and so forth for consideration?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Always looking for new artists. In addition to the next iteration of what Sixth Dimension is going to look like next year, I already have a couple other exhibitions in my head ready to that I'm planning to go for the next 2 years. So always looking to grow my repertoire of Black artists. And so folks can just best way is just honestly send me a DM. I'm on Instagram a lot, and that's actually where I find a lot of artists just going through there. And so they can message me at Six Dimension Fest, or my curator page is actually curator.nita.nita. Feel free to please send me a message or send me an email at afrofuture at sixdimension.net.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Sister Juanita Sunday Austin. Thank you so much. You were an awesome guest. And once again, I'm just So excited for the work that you're doing. Like I said, I'm actually coming out there in the coming weeks, so I'm looking forward to seeing this exhibit in person. So that'll about do it for us today on Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. We're taking Black folks into the future. And you hear it here, folks. It's not just about what Black folk can do. The question is, what are you doing to bring about that future? So whatever your contribution is, no matter how big, no matter how small, just being cordial is a contribution to the future.
Absolutely.
Loving yourself is a contribution to the future. And I always go back to Frances Cress Welsing when she says, Black love is a revolutionary act.
Oof,
Let's
yes.
just love one another. Let's just appreciate who we are and just tune out everything else. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, have a good day. Take care. This is Will Jones, Into the Afroverse. We're taking Black folks into the future. Have a good one.